Yes, this sort of follows up a little on that. I mean, I was very interested in the quote from Ingres, arguing that touch was a negative quality in painting because it made visible the making, made the facture visible. But it isn't clear to me from what you said about Cécignac that in a sense he would disagree with that, because it seems as if you're thinking of the divided touch as a way of achieving some kind of optical mixture on the canvas, then what you're concerned about is the way in which that optical mixture is going to affect the viewer. So you're still concerned that the viewer should respond to what's on the canvas rather than see what's on the canvas in terms of its making. So, I mean, do you think that there was any disagreement on the part of the Neo-impressionists with Ingres over the general principle that it wasn't important that the viewer, or it's in fact important to discourage the viewer from being concerned with visible signs of making and to aim to produce a particular effect in the viewer based on what's on the canvas rather than refer the viewer to the process whereby the canvas was made?
I think that the main reason why Cécignac and also Delacroix disagreed with Ingres is that for Ingres, the touch must not be visible because it's a kind of distraction. Is a distraction from what is supposed to show the painting, and so what seems to me interesting in Cécignac is his insistence on the fact that it is a conventional means of painting. And so I think this is the main, probably the main reason why he praised touch as an artificial and conventional means of painting. And that's why I was quoting his reply to the people who said, but we don't have many colors like this on the face. That's right. But so, and that's why I think that it is a kind of prefiguration of the sign theory, because he accepted the conventional nature of the dot. That's what I would say.
May I add something?
Yeah.
Ingres did paint deformed bodies in some ways, and so he has another way to make the painting apparent or visible, I mean, the gesture. No, just to carry on this point.
Well, but it's different. It's true, well, that in Ingres there's a kind of exaggeration, for example, in the neck of the famous odalisque. But so this is quite, this is also an exaggeration, but not of the way of painting. And so Ingres always hides the gesture of the hand.
Alessandro?
In order to make a kind of brutal connection between the two talks, because many cues that you give to understand the kind of general mental state of the artist who produced would probably, some of them at least, enhance the motor simulation of the gesture. For instance, at the beginning, I don't know if you get, if I get it correctly, you say that when reason of opposition, that the Neo-impressionism said that the Impressionists were focused on the kind of ever-changing, particular transitive quality of impression, whether post-impressionists look for something more general, more essential, or more. Exactly. And this is an extremely classical reason of va-et-vient between artistic or intellectual movement. This focus on the particular and on the general. And this kind of idea, I guess, would, for at least for completely naive subjects, would give some cue to promote the motor simulation of the gesture, because the simulation of the gesture would be integrated into a kind of more general simulation of the state of mind. I think it would be quite intuitive how looking for something very ever-changing, the stroke is more relevant, whether the dot. I don't know if you have something to.
Well, about the previous papers, I'm not responsible for it, so I cannot see. but what I can say, and this is an important point. Yes, you grasp that the difference. Well, one of the difference between Impressionism and Neo-impressionism is that for Neo-impressionism, they were very rational, very scientific, and so they rejected Impressionism as a way of of showing, as we know from Monet, the way light changes in every moment when looking at the Cathedral of Rouen or something like that. And Neo-impressionists belong more to a symbolist aesthetic at fin de siècle in France, and so they were looking for more permanent features and not so ever-changing moment. But this also had a consequence for the way of painting. That's the reason why they wanted to detach the touch from the subject matter of the painting.
In the writing of Signac, it is put in that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Gregory Currie?
So, thank you very much. I found that immensely interesting, particularly this debate between Ang and Delacroix. So I'm just wondering whether, given Ang's position here, he would, or perhaps did, have similar objections to forms of painting involving strokes, where the strokes are visible. So, sort of, if you think about late Titian kind of stuff, would that be equally objectionable or similarly objectionable from his point of view, because it fails to efface the activity of the artist? You can see the brushstrokes there.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
So if I'm a painter, I don't use points, I use brushstrokes, but I leave my brushstrokes very visibly distinguished. It seems to me, given Ang's objection to this, he ought to object equally to that kind of a technique using brushstrokes.
Comme chez Titian. Gregory Currie refers to late Titian paintings, les dernières peintures de Titian où les traits de pinceau sont apparents. Est-ce que Ingres objecterait à cette peinture du dernier Titien, ce qu'il objecte à...
Oh yes, it's exactly the same, yes. This is one of the differences between neoclassicism at the end of 19th century France. So yes, they had exactly the same kind of critique because for the same reason. This is to this is the same one that is the virtuosity of the hand. And
so the leading thesis is you should do everything to make the viewer forget that there was an artist who did this.
Yes, we could, yeah. Or well, I think that this is a kind of fantasy. And curiously, I found this kind of fantasy not only in Ingres, but also, for example, in a surrealist painter like Magritte. Magritte said exactly the same, that he had to use a kind of universal, he said, universal style in which there is no marks of painting on the canvas. And in fact, Magritte painted, he has no atelier. He was working in the kitchen of the apartment, and he was a very clean painter. So it's the same kind of fantasy, that the marks on the painting should disappear completely, because the only important thing is what is represented. So this is a kind of classical conception, but as I said, it's also valid for people like Magritte in the 20th century.
So, thank you very much. Time for break.